Saul Goodman is no Walter White. While AMC's rich, deadpan prequel Better Call Saul takes place in the same thoughtfully stylized New Mexico as its parent show Breaking Bad, and centers similarly on one man's transformation from sad sack to self-made legend, its opening moments make clear just how different the rules of this story are. Much of the tension in Breaking Bad came from the fact that we had no idea where Walt's dramatic, accelerated moral decline was ultimately going to lead him. But Better Call Saul, at least in its first season, is a closed circle. We see, in a beautifully filmed black and white opening sequence, exactly where James McGill ends up as a result of being Saul Goodman. In one of many delightful bits of fan service, he has fulfilled his own prophecy and now manages a Cinnabon in Omaha, having disappeared himself into a new identity post-Walter White. But even with the consolation of delicious pastry, it's a lonely, paranoid existence Saul's resigned to, constantly looking over his shoulder for fear of getting made, and watching videotapes of his own TV commercials for a taste of the good old days. Since the bulk of the show is set long before that bleak future, the question underlying all of this becomes, was it worth it? All of this is to say that while it's often enormous fun, Better Call Saul is a much more pensive and mournful show than anyone imagined when it was announced that Bob Odenkirk's larger-than-life lawyer was getting his own spin-off. Its title alone suggests a catchphrase-driven sitcom. But the type of humor Saul brought to Breaking Bad isn't enough to build a show around. Instead, Peter Gould and Vince Gilligan have taken the origin story route, delving into the process of how a Saul Goodman gets made, and how the distinctly unimpressive James McGill becomes the kind of guy Walt Jr. would be excited to run into at the car wash. Saul, who I guess I'm going to call James from here on because, weird though it feels, that is his name, is a long way from the sleazy hotshot we know and love here. He has 0 messages, a stack of unpaid bills, and can barely even get his parking validated at court, where he goes to defend paltry cases for even more paltry paychecks. There are glimpses of what's to come when he goes into performance mode, cajoling a jury with wistful rambling about his misspent youth, oh, to be 19 again, and energetically quoting Network at a room full of nonplussed corporate lawyers. The difference is that here we see him sweat. Maybe Saul was practicing his one-liners in the bathroom all the way through Breaking Bad, but I think by that point the performance had become pretty much ingrained, much like the Heisenberg persona started to fit Walt more comfortably than his own skin. While family isn't the same upfront driving force that it was in Breaking Bad, James's relationship with his mysteriously ailing brother Chuck, Michael McKean, does feel like the show's emotional spine. Formerly a formidable lawyer whose reputation cast a shadow over James, Chuck now seems to be in the grips of some kind of mental breakdown, but insists he'll soon be well enough to go back to work. It's a bad situation all round for James, who's trying to carry them both and failing, and it gives him new, very sympathetic dimension. His indignation on Chuck's behalf at the firm, and the way he apologetically backs off rather than upset his brother, makes it very clear that Slippin' Jimmy from Cicero is essentially a good guy at this point. It's also Chuck who first suggests the name change that we all know is coming. Why ride on someone else's coattails? But for now, James is focused on building his client base by any means necessary, up to and including extortion. The plan goes about as well as we all expect, but we do have Zach and Chris to thank for 2 of the very best moments in Uno. One being that visually fascinating skate park sequence, which felt right out of the Breaking Bad wheelhouse, and the second being James knocking on the door of a very, very memorable bad villain.